Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Great to have you all with us this afternoon. As Thomas said, I'm the Learning Capacity Building Manager with Volunteer Ireland. Delighted that you can join us for our session today on volunteer wellbeing, talking a little bit about positive volunteer culture and make sure that we have our volunteers engaged in our programs. Again, if you've got a question about this topic, it doesn't just stop with today's session. Be delighted to have a chat with any of you. You can find plenty of resources over on our website. It's volunteer.ie, or if you want to pop me an email, it's stuart@volunteer.ie. If you want to connect with me, I know it says my X is there, but it won't be there for much longer. I am on LinkedIn. So I will be there. If anyone wants to connect in with me, I'd be delighted to have a chat with you beyond today's session. There's absolutely no problem in connecting with me there. So a little bit about my background. I have been involved in volunteering for many years. I joined the Scouts when I was 8. My mum brought me across the road to my local Scout group. I became a leader, a volunteer leader in the Scouts, went on to be involved with youth work for a number of years before switching over to volunteer management. My background, as I say, is in human resource and management, volunteer management and leadership I've studied in, and I've also been studying health and safety and welfare work. So that's, I suppose, how my interest has come in the topic, but also my skill set as well. So hopefully I can bring some ideas to yourselves in terms of today's session and some of the things that I want to share with you. So again, just before we start, just asking maybe just all, if you can turn off your old mobile phones, just to give up the old distractions for the next hour or so. Thomas will send you on a copy of the slides afterwards. So don't try to write down everything. If you've got a question at any stage, please do drop it into the chat or into the Q&A feature. We'll be taking a little bit of a break just as well to stretch our legs a little bit. You're all on mute, so that's absolutely fine. And as I say, we'll have one break for about 5 minutes. We only will be with you for today, so 5 minutes, just a little bit of time to get up, stretch the legs, grab a tea or coffee, or to get some refreshments. I would encourage you to just to grab a pen and paper if you can, to jot down a few ideas from today's session. Don't try and write down everything. If we try and do that, sometimes we'll have so much to do that we won't actually get any work done whatsoever. So maybe what you can do is to focus on maybe some of the key action points that you'd like to take away from today's session. A reminder that by participating in this session, you can again use the hours required towards professional development requirements for your initial CVA, your Certified Volunteer Administrator Award. If you're interested to find out a little bit more about that, you can go over to their website. It's cvacert.org. And that's a global award in terms of volunteer management for leaders of volunteers. There is information sessions that are on across the year, which are absolutely free. So if you're interested, you can pop along there and find a little bit about that. Ourselves in Volunteer Ireland, we're the National Volunteer Development Agency for the Republic of Ireland. We work very closely with our colleagues in Volunteer Now in Northern Ireland, as well as our colleagues across Europe through the Centre of European Volunteering, and our colleagues in the US through the Points of Light network, which we're part of, and our colleagues in Volunteer Canada as well. So while we're a very small little country, we have a big spread, and we do believe in sharing our experience and gaining the experience from others in terms of what people are facing in terms of the challenges of volunteering post-pandemic. All right. Our mission, I suppose, is about supporting volunteering and advocating for excellence, accessibility, and inclusive volunteering. So again, you can find out more about that on our website if you're interested. Okay, so let's, I suppose, have a little look at, one of those things that we all have. It's our own mobile phone, all right? And it was probably, for some of us, it might have been a little bit of a struggle to turn off that mobile phone for the next hour or so, going, oh, I've got an important call. And if you've got a call to take, that's absolutely fine. But again, it's our resource for day-to-day life. We're very reliant on our mobile phones. It's probably our communication tool in terms of how we engage with family members. We might be engaging with work colleagues. We might be part of a WhatsApp group in our local community. We might have various apps on our phone. It'll definitely have our calendar in it. It's how we organize our lives. It's maybe how we log into our online computer. So we have it with us every step of the day. Keeping our phone charged is a really, really important thing. And we're either searching for a socket or somewhere to plug in our phone. It costs a lot of money depending on where you are and what phone you've got. So we put expensive apps. We spend a lot of money on a mobile phone given the size of it, all right? But what do we do to ensure that we can use it every day? all right, we take the time to charge it, all right? And we know the stress that comes on us when our phone isn't operating, all right? So, you might go, oh my God, I need to get it plugged in, or, it's gone dead for a few seconds, all right? So when we think a little bit of that, compare that, I suppose, to ourselves, and, we charge it, but we also have to recharge ourselves, all right? And one little thing I suppose that you can do to that is if you go to the settings and screen time in your phone, don't do it now, but you can do it afterwards, and check the rate. So check, how much time over the last month or over the last week you've been using your phone. Now, I'm not innocent in this one. I'm as guilty of it too as well myself. But to see how much time we use on the screen. So, we invest a lot of time, we invest a lot of effort in that. But what we've got to realize is making sure that we look after ourselves as well. So a little bit of thinking that we should apply what we apply to our mobile phones, to ourselves and to our volunteers as well. So we're going to take a look at volunteer well-being in this session. We're going to explore ways, I suppose, that we can provide support to our volunteers and look at some of the ways that some volunteer involving organizations have supported their volunteers. Now, we're not going to go to get an in-depth look in those, but I will share some of those with you this afternoon, all right? We're going to explore that relationship between paid staff and volunteers and making sure that's a good, positive one. And we'll explore how good volunteer management practice can impact all areas of our organization. So I'm just going to ask you to pop in the chat. Some of you have done it already, but just tell us your name, where you're based or where you're coming from, and maybe what you'd like to get out of this learning opportunity. And maybe that's just that you want to learn a little bit more about well-being. You can pop that in the chat. All right. So let's see where we've got everyone coming from. I see plenty of people from the States. I saw the Orkney Islands in there as well, and I saw Derry. So great to see that. Hertfordshire in England. Brilliant. That's great. Kentucky. New Hamptons, Glasgow in Scotland. Very good. Thanks a lot. Amy from Birmingham, Croydon, Canada. Great. Vegan Society in the UK. Brilliant. Thanks for joining us. Chichester, Nashville, Tennessee. Very good. Like for good. Excellent. London, Northumberland, Colorado, California, Cumbria, Exeter, and Grey Wormouth. Very excellent. Okay, we've got a really wide spread of people there today. Brilliant. Thank you, everyone, for that. Really good to hear from you all, Cambridgeshire. So definitely both sides of the pond. Good mix of people. Molly's joining us from National Gallery here on our own patch in Ireland. That's great. And Logan as well. Brilliant. Estelle is joining us from Exeter. Deborah from Dublin too as well. Brilliant. Okay. All right. Really good mix of people. Thanks, everyone, for that. All right. So what we're going to look at, I suppose, is some of the tools that you can use and some of the things that I use in terms of my engagement with people. This is a slide that we've used many, many times. You don't need to go into this now at the moment, but it's a really useful tool to have if you're doing a training online. So a lot of things that we've done have shifted online. And sometimes when we go into these sessions, we can go, hey, everyone's ready for great fun today. It's always good to find out exactly where people are right now, all right? So this is a slide that you can share. I'm going to show you two other ones that we use as well. Just before the start of our meetings, and we ask people to let themselves know how they are. So we're not putting anyone on the spot and saying to someone that, do you feel pretty ordinary or not ready to learn, or you're excited to get started? And you're always going to have that mix of people that's in there. And if you as a leader of volunteers are delivering training, there's a lot of emphasis on you to make sure that people are in that safe space to do that, all right? So that's a simple little slide that we have. You can use the annotate feature in Zoom, and people can click on a little stamp to say how they feel, all right? Another little bit of an engagement thing that we use sometimes with people it's just for them to let us know where they are, all right? And again, it can be just a little bit of a conversation piece, so they can say, oh, this is where I am in the country, and they can put their heart on their favorite place. If anyone's in Ireland, they generally put the hearts down the west side of the country, and probably most of them are living in and around about Dublin. So again, it's just a little bit of a conversation piece for people without people having to interact. Again, that's a Canva slide. If any of you'd like me to share it with you, I can do that as well. A Mandela, really, really nice little tool. You will be amazed at the artwork that I see of people doing this. So again, you can ask them just to set the tone for the meeting, that people are feeling comfortable, that they can feel a little bit relaxed, that they don't feel they're coming to school. particularly if they haven't met you before with a group. So again, we're asking them there to chat about the dinner date, and they can use the annotate feature to color in the mandala. And again, the colors that have been put in on that in just a few minutes. And again, if we're doing in-person training, some people prefer to they like to scribble, they like to, draw, and they do these amazing things. That's just helping people in terms of the space that they're in at any one particular time. So again, you might offer that as a sheet of paper. We had a lovely one that was done by a volunteer group, and it was a drawing of volunteers, and people were coloring it in person at an event. And it was amazing just to see, how it helped them to concentrate of just doing that on the day. All right. So when we think of the dimensions of health, all right, so mental and physical health are just two aspects of the wider concept of health. Many factors combine together to affect the health of individuals and community, and health is multidimensional. So physical health concerns the mechanistic functioning of the body. Mental health is about the ability to think clearly and coherently, as a positive sense of purpose and an underlying belief in one's own worth. Emotional health is the ability to recognize emotions and feelings and to express them appropriately. Social health is a sense of having support, ability to develop and maintain relationships. Spiritual health is recognition and ability to put into practice faith, principles, values, beliefs, achieving peace of mind, being at peace with oneself. Sexual health is the acceptance and ability to achieve a satisfactory expression of one's sexuality. Societal health is the link between health and the way society is structured. And finally, environmental health is the physical environment in which people live. All right. So again, within our own life cycles and where all our volunteers are at any one particular time, it might be that one of those things are affecting them. It might be a multitude of those at any one time. But giving people a safe space for them to feel comfortable that they can talk about those things if they want to, or they just want to go, hey, Stuart, I need to take a mental health day. And we don't need to go into a big discussion about it, that we can say, that's absolutely fine. Off you go. We'd be delighted for you to do that. All right. So again, just two little definitions that we have here, I suppose, is looking at that in terms of mental health. So again, particularly post-pandemic, we can talk that we are out of the pandemic. We can talk about us being still in the pandemic, still having COVID. Whatever way you look at it, a lot of people were affected by the pandemic in terms of those challenges that were there for it. Myself and Thomas were just talking about, how long we were all off for beforehand, and did we do things? And some of us did things. Maybe some of us watched everything that was on Netflix or on YouTube. Some of us read a book or whatever it was. But if we actually knew how long we were going to be off, like what, would we have done with that period of time of doing maybe something a little bit constructive? And that's the important piece of us looking after our well-being, is doing what's right for us. Now, that's not saying you need to do yoga or you need to do whatever. You need to do whatever is right for you. And again, that's the thing, I suppose, that we're providing a safe space within our volunteer programs to share those things with our volunteers. I remember, during the pandemic, we had an online session. It was one of the first ones that we had with them, and it was on Zoom. And we went, wow, that went really well. And everyone came in and we had a chat, and it was great to see faces that we hadn't seen in a few weeks. And then we went, okay, well, we need to up the game for the next one. We need to do something. So let's do a Kahoot quiz. And not saying no one, but very few volunteers turned up for the next one. And we were talking, like, why didn't you come along? And we were like, oh, we thought it was like an exam. And it was like, no, it's not an exam. It was just a fun quiz. But we didn't tell them it was a fun quiz. So sometimes we were over-engineering what we needed to do to support the volunteers' well-being, when all they really wanted was a safe space to have a chat. Now, I'm not saying don't do a quiz. I'm not saying that. Nor am I saying just having a safe space will work for your volunteers, but it's about knowing what works for your volunteers is really, really important. All right. So what mental health involves, all right, is our relationship with ourselves. So our confidence, self-esteem, self-awareness, self-respect, and how we feel about ourselves. And do I like being me? All right. Taking care of both the physical and mental health is a key for everyone's well-being. Our relationships with others, which is the ability to sustain meaningful relationships, friends, family, work colleagues, how we connect in the world. And again, doing those things as would have happened in the pandemic, where we couldn't go for a coffee or have a water cooler moment with our colleagues in work. And again, then in terms of thinking a little bit about how we cope with life's demands. So again, life is demanding. We need positive ways to cope and balance life's demands. Okay. So again, just to say to you, if you've got a question at any stage, pop it in the chat. Feel free to do so at any stage. One of the slides we're going through, and we'll have a little bit of time a little bit later on to explore some of those. So I'm going to share with you some research that we've done here in Ireland. Again, some of the pieces that we've done have reflected the experience of volunteers elsewhere in the world in terms of the things that people were getting out of while volunteering. And what we were seeing was, and I think a lot of organizations around the world have seen this, is that the value of volunteering often extends more than the actual volunteering that they're doing themselves. So the social aspect of volunteering, the interaction with other individuals, the sharing of like-minded ideas was really, really important. With our research, we were seeing, this was our second one done during the pandemic, in terms of the value that volunteers felt. All right, so maybe communicating them in terms of your own situation to volunteers is really, really important. What we were hearing back from volunteers was the important things about communication being key. Now, we know that's a thing in terms of all volunteer management, but making sure that even in situations where we don't know what the situation is, it's still important to communicate. So as we were just saying beforehand, you know, when we all went off on lockdown, there was that belief that it was maybe for 2 weeks, which turned into 4 weeks, which turned into 8 weeks, which then turned into 2 or 3 years. And as organizations, maybe we struggled. We didn't know whether our programs were going to open or not. And for a lot of volunteers, what they were saying was, I didn't hear from the organization. So even if I'm not volunteering, I don't feel that I'm actually, not say being valued, but I don't think they actually appreciate me. Adaptability and flexibility is what we're seeing, is that volunteers are looking for that across the globe. All right. So whether that's flexibility in volunteering, whether that's short-term episodic volunteering, because a lot of us are working from home now. I'm working from home. I'm living on the other side of the country to where I used to work, which is a great opportunity for me to live in the countryside, which I'm delighted with. But that's an adaptability and flexibility that's offered to me in a work setting. I might be looking for that same situation in volunteering. I might also be looking to maybe reconnect in with my friends and colleagues in that setting. But having that adaptability and flexibility is a key in terms of engaging people from new communities and ensuring our diversity within our organizations. Support and training, really, really important in terms of making sure that we're bringing our volunteers on board. Now, we should never have our training that we're training them for training's sake, not that we're training them to do things they do already, but training them to give them new skills, something that they can, that's a transferable skill that they can bring to another part of their life, whether that be in the work or the family, which will help them while they're volunteering, but also be useful to them in another setting. We've also got to think as well in terms of word of mouth has been very important in terms of volunteering, of how people find out about our programs. But if we're reliant on advertising, let's say online on social media platforms, is that still going to have the same piece? And if people are not maybe connecting as much as they did in the past, how do we make sure that people feel part of our programs? Another piece of research was done looking at the health and well-being factors of volunteering. Lots of positive things that people were talking about there in terms of their own experience, what they were getting out of it, the fulfillment, really, really positive experiences that they were having. All right. Again, we were seeing, you know, that they were seeing positive things in terms to learning a second language if English wasn't their second language, feeling better mentally. So again, having interaction with like-minded individuals, and again, seeing that more tolerance and being open to welcome people from different communities, different backgrounds into the volunteer program. Another piece of research done by one of our leading banks here, Permanent TSB with Kantar. And again, it was looking at 1,000 adults, looking at sort of some of the things that were there in terms of their experiences of how they felt. And this was in 2022. So again, overall, some pessimism, optimism that's there too as well. But again, people looking to reconnect in is a positive thing. And if we can offer those opportunities within our programs, really, really important. Again, some research from Courtney Tull over on the Atlantic side in the States, looking at Habitat for Humanity. Really interesting research. If you Google her, you can find her online. You can get your hands on the full research, but really, really interesting in terms of the experience that's there, in terms of what people were doing, what they, you know, the reasons they gave for it. Wasn't necessarily just to explore what Habitat for Humanity does as an organization, but wanting to do more than that. All right. And again, you can see there, I'm not going to read it all out, but again, some of the common reasons that we might see for people to be coming and join us. Do remember though, that, when you hear something like people coming forward that, everyone or not, it seems that everyone wants to join your organization because they want to help people or the cause was really important to them. Make sure that you realize the motivation can change and does change over time, particularly if someone has joined because they wanted their child to be a part of a program or something like that, that the motivation might change. So making sure that if we are making sure that the motivation is met, the volunteer is going to be happy and they're more likely to stay with the program. Okay. So again, if we take a look, I suppose that, thinking a little bit about our program from the outside. So let's take a step back of not even volunteers in our program. There can sometimes be the challenge of, what is the perception for the outside? I was involved with the Scouts for many, many years. It's a global organization. If you've been involved in the Scouts, you go, oh yeah, I get it. But for some people, it can sometimes be a challenge. And if we think about, and again, depending on where you are in the world, you'll know what this means. So is your experience in your volunteer programs, is it a first class experience, or is it something like Spirit Airlines? Is it like Ryanair or EasyJet? All right, so big difference between the two. Are you more San Pellegrino or are you more tap water? All right. Are you more Lamborghini or are you more Velada? Or is it a hot tub or a cold plunge pool? All right. Maybe you're going for the real Gucci bag, or maybe you're there for the fake copy, or finally, is it an apartment or a house with a garden? All right. Now, what does all that mean? Really, what we need to do is to let people know what our program is about, talking about whether we're one or the other. All right. There's absolutely nothing, well, not say there's nothing wrong, but like, if you know what you're going for with Spirit Airlines or you're flying with Ryanair, you're getting from A to B. If you're flying with Emirates or some other Singapore Airlines and you're expecting first class, you're spending a lot of money on that and your expectations are going to be higher. Water, whether it be San Pellegrino or tap water, does the same thing. It quenches your thirst, but again, it's going to depend on yourself. So letting people know what you're about, the type of supports you can provide, the limitation on those things are really, really important. Quite often as volunteer managers or leaders of volunteers, we're really good, nice people. And we tend to, I suppose, think a little bit of going, we must give the volunteer everything. We can't do that, all right? We can give a certain amount of supports, but we've also got to be there to signpost individuals. So if someone needs additional support, if they're going through a particular challenge at any one particular time, that we can support them in that. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have lots of changes that are taking place. Now, these aren't just taking place post-pandemic. A lot of these things have been coming for a long period of time. What has happened is the pandemic has escalated those and pushed them forward a lot, all right? So as I said, a lot of people are looking for flexibility. In Ireland, those people who don't volunteer would, 58% of those that are currently volunteering will prefer short-term assignments. So they want to get in, they want to see what it's like before they commit to it. They don't want to make that long-term commitment. And the concern would be in a country where you've got a lot of people that are involved in fixed longer-term assignments, that people are going, that's not for me, all right? Nobody wants to volunteer, particularly on their own. They'd all like to do it, or most of them would prefer to do it with their family, a group of friends, or new individuals to it, all right? For a long time, we've seen that people will talk about the organization that they volunteer with. So it's a bit like me saying, I volunteer with the Scouts, all right? So I'm with that. But what do you actually do? What particular area are you with? So again, thinking about the task and talking about that to your volunteers, having a call to action is an important thing. They don't necessarily go to the brand, but they go to what your organization is doing, all right? And again, remembering as we are here today on Zoom, all right, it's absolutely great. We can talk to people across the world. It's great having you joining us all today. Some people like it, some people dislike it, all right? If you've got younger people on board, they might be more self-conscious. They might not feel comfortable in terms of having their cameras on. It might be that some people are neurodivergent, find it a little bit of a challenge to be on that thing. It'll work for some people. Other people prefer to do things online. So again, in terms of our engagement, making sure that we've got those different opportunities there for our volunteers that they can engage online in person, whichever is the option. All right. So there's no right or wrong to that. It's about knowing your own group. And as I say, I'll talk to one group and I'll say, what works for you? And they go, we don't know, Stuart. So it's a bit about talking to them and find out what works for them, what they like. Don't just listen to the loudest voices, listen to all your volunteers as well. So again, having an annual feedback from your volunteers is an important thing. One of the things that we've worked on with our colleagues in Mental Health Ireland, which is that national organisation looking after mental health, is 5 ways to volunteer wellbeing. And we share this in all our training to all our volunteers that they do, whether they do that in person or they do it online. All right. So it's based around the 5 models of mental health and that's been adjusted. So even no matter where you are in the world, you probably heard something like this. But by providing just this one slide, what we find is we get a lot of positive feedback from volunteers, and the training might be about manual handling, it might be about dealing with difficult situations. A lot of them will talk about this slide. So even just the small 5 things that we mentioned in this slide are really, really important to people, that they feel that we're providing a space that they can feel safe in and they can talk about their well-being. Okay. So let's have a look at these 5 particular things. So we're asking our volunteers to consider the 5 ways to well-being. All right. So make time to connect with the people around you, with family, friends, colleagues, and neighbors, at home, work, school, or in your local community. By staying connected and nurturing these relationships, we feel happier and more secure, giving us a better sense of purpose. As a volunteer, you will be connecting with people every time you volunteer. Be active. So again, we encourage our volunteers to look for ways to be active every day. Go for a walk or a run, step outside, cycle, play a game, garden, or dance. Discover a physical activity which you enjoy that suits your lifestyle and level of mobility and fitness. Research has shown that being physically active can improve your mental health and well-being. Again, as being a volunteer, you'll be active. People have been known to walk 3 or 4 kilometers a day at some of the events they've been volunteering at. The next one is to take notice. So be aware of the world around you and what you're feeling. Be curious, catch sight of the beautiful, notice the change in seasons, savor the moment, whether you're walking to work, eating lunch, or talking to friends. Pay attention to the present moment, to your thoughts, feelings, and to the world around you. Keep learning. Try something new, rediscover an old interest, sign up for that course, cook a new recipe, take on a new responsibility. Setting yourself a new challenge and learning a new skill will increase your confidence, which can improve your mental health and well-being. And whilst being a volunteer, you'll be learning all the time in many more formal and informal ways through training and informal engagement with others. And finally, give. So give to others is good for you. Do something nice for someone else. Thank someone. Volunteer your time in your local community or in a local group. Seeing yourself and your happiness linked to the wider community can be incredibly rewarding and create connectiveness with the people around you. And of course, being a volunteer, you'll be giving the best gift, your time, to the individuals you support, but also to the wider community. So as I say, it's something that we fit into all our training to acknowledge the experience with volunteers in terms of the positive experience that they can have. All right. So what I am going to do is we're going to take a break in a few minutes, but just before we go to the break, does anyone have a question first? Okay, not to worry. If you want to pop your question in the chat at any one stage, we'll come back to it. That's absolutely no problem at all. So we're going to take a short power break for literally 5 minutes. Please don't sit where you are. Get up, move around, stretch your legs, grab a cup of tea or coffee, and we will see you back here in 5 minutes' time. You'll see the time counting down on the screen. So we'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you got to stretch a little bit or get up and grab yourself a snack. So I just see one question that we got here from Agnes, who I think may have some ancestry in Hungary, who's asking, how do you incorporate the 5 ways of well-being into your volunteer training or activities in practice? So again, it's part of the training for volunteers that they do online for volunteers. So they are basically, when they do their training, they do that online. And that's a slide that we include in it. We also do it in our in-person one, but we also include that piece of sometimes they do the training, it might be 6 months earlier. So we, at the beginning of the training, we say, hey, or at the beginning of the session that we do with them, we say, does anyone remember what the 5 ways to well-being are? And they go, gosh, I can't remember. Let me see. Oh, there was, can we give? Yeah, okay, excellent. So again, it's just 5 little simple things to do that. And then we also share that with them. So we've had our volunteers on the community volunteer program have gone through psychological first aid training. We have just completed some bystander training, myself and some of our colleagues on the training team. So we're going to be rolling out that. So if they're in a situation where they're with someone who's being called out for those particular, their nationality or whatever it is, that they can sort them with that. What happens when one volunteer's well-being impacts another? Again, it's about having that safe space for people to talk about that, for people to be able to step away from that and to realize that people can be going through challenging and difficult situations. So we provide that safe space for that. I'm not saying it's always perfect, but it does help, Estelle. Thanks for that question. And Emily is asking, do you do group training or individual training? Oh, group training, Emily. There is lots of tools that are out there too as well. So psychological first aid with the Red Cross, and not just here in Ireland, but the UK, across the Red Crescent. It's a really useful training for people to do. We have lots of mental health organizations here who are more than willing to do sessions for us. So they've helped us to deliver and design some of those. We also have the JAM card, which is slightly different, but for those that have hidden or invisible disabilities in terms of the engagement that's there. So yeah. Mandy is just putting in, we survey our volunteers regularly. Brilliant. And does volunteering improve your well-being question sometimes gets a response? No. And that's perfectly acceptable. Yeah. Presumably because they feel their well-being isn't always fine and not because the activity with us is damaging their well-being. Yeah. Have you any ideas on how to assess well-being impact in a better way than this simple question? Yeah, well, yes, the short answer is yes, Mandy. I'd suggest maybe if you want to pop me an email afterwards, I can talk to you a little bit about that. But it's a bit like asking that question, do you like volunteering with the organization? And sometimes people will say yes. So if you look at things such as the Volunteer Impact Assessment Toolkit, no, don't be apologizing, Mandy. It's not a long question at all. I'd love to have a chat with you about it. So if you want to pop me an email, we can have a chat about it at some stage. I'll pop the email up at the end anyway again. But again, just that piece of, talking to someone, what was your experience beforehand and how do you feel now? But to recognize there will be those fluctuations between time, but absolutely love to have a chat with you again about it. Again, just we have a bit to get through, so I'll keep going. I see now you're all flowing with the questions, and we'll give some time at the end, so I'll try and get to those. Do remember, in terms of someone coming in to join your organization, that it should be like a first date, not a marriage. All right. That sometimes as an organization, we're nearly turning up with a white dress when we see a volunteer going, hey, come in, you're ours, you're part of us. It's like, right now, I don't feel ready for that. So again, just take it one step at a time. All right. Today's volunteers aren't looking to marry you, and they simply want a date and see where it goes. And that's from Time Bank in the UK, the research they did, which found that around 58% saying it was the biggest barrier, even though the charity says they're learning to be more, learning to be more flexible. That's there. All right. So again, when we talk about flexibility, we're talking about the current circumstances, all right? So again, due to the current cost of living crisis, flexible volunteering is more appealing. Volunteers can still complete volunteering, but still have the spare time they need. And this will be more useful if volunteers want to do extra paid work in order to help them out during the cost of living crisis, all right? Convenience, many volunteers have busy schedules and can't commit to regular fixed volunteering hours. Adaptive volunteering allows them to contribute to a cause that they care about in a way that works with their schedule and lifestyle. Diverse opportunities. Adaptable volunteering often includes a wider range of activities such as remote volunteering, micro-volunteering, opportunities that can be completed in a shorter period of time. Skills-based volunteering, flexible volunteering offers volunteers to use their specific skills and expertise in a way that fits with their interests and strengths. And finally, personal satisfaction, volunteers who have the freedom to choose when and how they volunteer feel more in control of their experience, leading to greater personal satisfaction and a sense of commitment. And then finally, social impact. It allows organizations to tap into a wider pool of volunteers who may not be able to commit to traditional volunteering opportunities, leading to greater social impact and community cohesion. Okay, so let's have a look in terms of the stages of volunteer involvement. And this could be across one period of time. It could be over a volunteer that's with you for a year, 2 years, 5 years. But these are sort of the peaks and troughs that a volunteer will go through. And again, this has sort of been shown in a lot of research. So while this timeline is there for 2 years, it could be longer, but these are the stages that they're going through. So again, you've got initially the volunteer coming in. They're researching volunteer involving organizations. They're applying to those organizations. So there's a lot of idealism, hopes. There might be fears going, gosh, I wonder what it's going to be like. They're seeing maybe the bureaucracy that's involved in our program. So that might be a barrier for them. They're then entering the organization, trying to help as much as they possibly can. So they want to end homelessness. They want to, clean up the beach, that whatever it is that they're involved with, they want to do lots of it. All right. And their idealism might be a little bit low. Their satisfaction is certainly low because they're beginning only to realize what the volunteer involving organization's role really is. So sometimes, as I say, people will jump at the organization and then go, oh, but this is what you do. All right. And particularly, let's say, if you're in the health sector or in any role, there's going to be other organizations which are like yours. So for us to be very, very clear in terms of what the role is in which your organization is really, really important. They then start to give actual help. So, right, now I realize what the organization is doing. So there's a little bit of idealism coming in there, both sadness, but triumph too as well. But they're getting a higher satisfaction because they're actually realizing that they're making a difference. Again, they're giving more focused help to fewer clients, which again, the realism is coming in there, but they might be feeling a little bit of cynicism. They might have a little bit of fatigue, and they might be feeling a little bit tired. So again, it's that point then to decide, right, well, do I want to disconnect from my group of friends, colleagues, or clients that are in the organization? How do I feel about that organization? So there might be sadness, there might be relief, there might be the idealism of coming, I want to go and do another different volunteering role. All right. So again, I suppose what we need to sell in terms of the experience to our volunteers, and as mentioned in that research done by Indeed in 2021, was the sense of purpose of what we do as an organization. All right. That role in terms of that, it'll help you to meet new friends. All right. That'll increase their social skills. Their self-esteem will be improved. That they're going to learn valuable skills while they're volunteering. That again, they're going to, if they're interested in it as a role, they're going to get career insights. That it's going to bring fun into their life. So they're not just doing this mundane task. That they can help be happier in their own life and finally getting themselves out of that comfort zone. All right. So the next thing that we're going to take on, I suppose, is making sure that we're giving compassionate care to our volunteers. All right. So letting them know that they're not alone. All right. So again, that we've never been through this situation before. And again, if they need help, that they seek help. All right. Be wary of being a volunteer manager where you're trying to be everything. We all know that volunteer managers or leader volunteers tend to wear 10 hats. But making sure that you are careful in terms of the help and support that you give and you're not operating outside of your own area. All right. Encouraging those volunteers to look after themselves, to eat well. Something as simple as drinking water might sound, that's not rocket science. It isn't. But again, we can all get ourselves into a difficult spot. And again, encouraging them to get up, to move their body around and to get some sleep. All right. Getting them to look after themselves as well, to stop, to breathe, and to think. All right. Take a moment and be still. All right. So again, for some people, that's listening to some classic music. For some other people, that's listening to Led Zeppelin or whatever it is, So everyone's going to be doing that in different ways. But again, it's just providing that spot. If you go into a group and say, okay, we're all going to do yoga now, half the group might be going, that's going to stress me out even more. The other half might be going, this is the best thing we've ever done. All right. So knowing your group is really, really important. All right. again, looking at those opportunities around learning about themselves, and again, thinking that little bit in terms of giving as well. So again, looking after themselves and looking after each other. All right. One of the ways that we can do that is through the various different opportunities. And again, I know these occur on different days depending on where you are, but obviously our next one is International Volunteer Day on the 5th of December, the theme of which will be announced shortly. So keep an eye on the UN Volunteer Programme for that. We've just had International Volunteer Managers Day, the theme of which was looking at the whole area. What does the future hold for us? What is the future normal? We have our National Volunteer Week here in Ireland in May. In the UK, it's in June. In the States and Canada, you're going to have it at different stages of the year. But again, an opportunity to link in with your volunteers, to promote your volunteer program, and to provide a space for them just to come together in a little social element. Pay It Forward Day coming forward in April each year, Micro Volunteering Day. And again, we have a Volunteer Ireland Awards. And again, you've got national awards that are in your own home countries too as well, encouraging you to nominate and recognise your volunteers. All right. When we think about our own programs, I suppose also to think a little bit about that little piece of, what does your volunteer program look like? So if your volunteer program looks a little bit like this, and sometimes it is, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. My office does look a little bit like that right now, I have to tell you. But if volunteers are coming into that, that might not make them feel comfortable, all right? And particularly if it's like that all the time, we want to not arrive into a fire station. We want to arrive into a safe space to volunteer where we're going to have different experiences and we're going to feel comfortable in those. Remember, as a leader of volunteers as well, that your niceness will help you recruit the volunteer, but it's your competency that'll keep them there. All right. So again, it's maybe when they're with you a little bit of time that they feel it's a safe space, that they can share their experiences with you. Really good quote from Steve McCurley there. Again, if you're not aware of Steve, have a look at some of his books that he's written down through the years. You'll find him on Amazon and a few other booksellers too as well. All right. Great to hear someone talking there as well around the feedback. Asking for volunteers' feedback is really, really good. Asking someone, do they like volunteering with your organization? You're probably going to get 99% of people liking it. That's why they're there. So again, you might think of something like the volunteer impact assessment. There are plenty of other tools that's out there. There's a new one that's been just recently launched in Europe, and the name of which fails me. It's an Erasmus Plus project. And we have a workshop on about it. I cannot, is it Viva? It is. No, it's not Viva. Oh, that's terrible. I can't remember the name. But anyway, if you pop over to our website, there's a free workshop that's coming up in November. It'll come to me in a minute. I'll think of it. Anyway, there's plenty of tools that are out there, but research-based tools are really good ones. And you're asking, you ask people whether they agree or disagree with a statement on a Likert scale. So from strongly agree to strongly disagree, more than just yes, no answers. All right. Also important that we remember that they're not your volunteers, but you are their organization. So it's putting the volunteer first is the important thing that you can do that's there. All right. Important that we learn from the exit. So when anyone leaves our volunteer programs, that we talk to them about their experience. How did they get on? How did they enjoy it? Would they recommend it to a friend? Why are they leaving? All right. So if someone is leaving because of a job, a change of their moving house, or they've just been doing it for a long period of time, that's absolutely fine. But if we're hearing and seeing trends that are there between volunteers going, it's not what I thought it was going to be, that should start alarm bells to be ringing. So maybe we were over selling a role, over marketing a role, talking about how amazing it is when it isn't that, or maybe we were underselling the role, or the commitment we were asking for wasn't very, very clear. So making sure that we're clear with those things with volunteers that's there. Emily's just asking, is the volunteer impact assessment freely available? It's not, unfortunately, but there's some other ones that are completely free that's there. You can buy it online for about 45 euros. We run a training in it. I'm not trying to sell something online, but yeah, go and have a look at them that's there. There are plenty of them, not just that one, but it is a research-based tool which was developed by the Institute of Volunteering Research and NCVO, or Volunteering England as it was in the UK. But as I say, there are other ones that are there. All right. Be aware, I suppose, of going, what should we all, we should all have the apple, because, yep, that'd be the healthy thing to do. But, oh God, I'd love a sticky donut right now. Be aware of, what the volunteer seems to be saying or what they want isn't always the same. All right. So it might be the cool thing to say they want the apple, but maybe they do want the sticky bun. Now, when we think of that in terms of our volunteer programs, we might be the apple, we might be the sticky bun, but having a chat around people's motivation with people is really, really important. That's what I want you to take away with that one. All right. In terms of our organizations, be aware, I suppose, of the issues that are there that can be there for. So people want to feel part of the program. All right. Trusting our volunteers that if we bring in the right people, and it's okay to say that you need a mental health day or I just need some time, is to go, look, is it okay if I don't come in tomorrow? Not that people are lying to you and go, oh, I'm going to a wedding tomorrow. Oh, are you really? And oh gosh, I really feel awkward. I don't want to let the organization down. But it's a safe space for them to say, look, I'm not feeling 100%. I maybe don't need to bring that in with our other service users or to mix it around with the other volunteers. And I feel that that's fine. And organizations that do that, yes, you'll have that, but it's a safer space that people feel more comfortable, feel more welcome within the program. All right. Again, as I said earlier, it's great to be on Zoom and we can do that, but sometimes Zoom can be very, very fatiguing. I tonight have to do a training which is online for 2.5 hours, and I'm happy when at the end of the 2.5 hours I go, okay, that's the end of the session, and people go, oh my God, it's 2.5 hours. I don't want them to go, oh my God, I've been at work all day long, and yeah, that feels like 2.5 hours. So making sure that if we're delivering stuff online, that we're putting a bit of extra energy and pizzazz into it for people to feel that it's important or not. As we say those things earlier, if people are working from home, they'll be possibly looking for those opportunities to volunteer from home. It's not possible in all of our organizations. We do need people face to face, but do we have people that are involved in a variety of different roles? And it's an interesting statistic came out of Scotland a couple of years ago. About 32%, I think, of the population volunteering in Scotland, but 66% of all of the volunteering that was done in Scotland was done by 6% of the volunteers. So a small group of people doing a huge amount of volunteering. And I'd say it's pretty much the same here in Ireland and possibly England as well. But, that's a crazy number. So where we have those longer term volunteers and they're contributing a lot, that's amazing. But they're involved in so many things that if they step away from volunteering, or die, as the case may be, that filling those shoes, we're not just filling one set of shoes, we're filling 6, 7, 8 set of shoes that are there. All right. And where people are working from home, sort of those muscular problems that can be there. So, we're at a desk. I'm feeling stressed and I'm feeling heavy in my shoulders because I'm not at a desk that maybe has an ergonomic chair. I'm working at the kitchen table, and maybe that's affecting my volunteering that's there. All right. So some people, it's like, well, what's the next thing that's going to be, coming around the corner? All right. So yes, after the pandemic, we've had Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We've had Israel and Palestine. Even more recently, the election in the United States. It's like people are going, will it ever just stop raining? There are lots of things that are going to be there. Is there going to be, what is the next pandemic or thing that's going to come along to us? All right. So how can we prepare ourselves? What can we learn from the last experiences to make sure that, okay, we can't volunteer, but we can keep those communication channels open with our volunteers, should I say. All right. Obviously, the cost of living has impacted volunteering globally. No matter where you are, yes, Ireland is an expensive country to live, but in the same way, relative to everywhere else, you're going to have those impacts. So thinking in our volunteer programs of, think about expenses that we pay to volunteers. If we don't pay, are we excluding some minority groups, those who are unemployed, younger people, where it might be a challenge for them to get to it? Oh, we have expenses, but maybe someone doesn't want to spend $2, €2, £2 on a bus fare because they have to wait 6 months for the money to come back. They might think a little bit about that. All right. Think a little bit about that thing of if people are remotely volunteering for you, how can they think a little bit around, do they need extra tools to do that remotely? All right. Can you afford that as an organization? All right. Mobile phones aren't a luxury item. But again, is that we don't think that everybody in the world has a mobile phone. It might be in a household setting. There might not be any Wi-Fi. There might not be broadband. It might be around access to that. So if we're going to do things online, does everyone in our volunteer pool have access to that? So yeah, we'll do an online yoga session. That'd be great. But maybe at 6 o'clock in the evening, our volunteer can't get access to that because his or her son is doing their homework online. All right. Some people just didn't possibly want to return after the pandemic or whatever, or there's other challenges that are there in their life. So again, we have to look to new groups of people to come forward to volunteering. And again, that some people want to change. They want to see that happening within their programs. All right. And finally, as I said earlier, it is again, it's okay to take a well-being day. All right, we're coming to the end. So I see a few questions and things. I'll try and get to those. But if you have a question, please do pop it in the chat and I'll try and get to it. All right. So some of the things that we can do in terms of improving our well-being for volunteers. All right. For us here in Ireland, we have Mental Health Ireland. You have organizations in your home country too as well. We get a lot of training provided with them. We've linked with them in terms of providing just sessions, just as part of it. And the feedback we get is really, really good, that it's just a safe space for people to engage with those. All right. You might think through psychological first aid. Again, the Red Cross and the Red Crescent around the world provide that at a very low cost or free. And it's been developed by the Swedish Red Cross. Even for yourselves as volunteer managers or leader volunteers, I'd encourage you to do it. It is around about signposting people who are going through a crisis or a challenge at any one particular time. There's also mental health first aid and courses a little bit longer and that people can do. Think about upskilling yourself as a leader of volunteers too as well. So, hey, you're here today. Hopefully it'll inspire you to go off and read a few more articles online or to Google some of the things that I've mentioned to you. Think about having a volunteer wellness budget. Now, in your organization, you might be struggling to get a volunteer budget, but again, is having that in place. Maybe it's just a once a year, you're going to your local coffee shop and bringing all your volunteers out and having a chat with them and see how they're getting on, all right? Nothing needs to be formal and overcomplicated. Employee and systems assistance programs for our volunteers that were involved with the vaccination and testing centres. Back during the pandemic, we had an EAP program, which is generally in place for employees, but we were able to get a grant to extend that for our volunteers too as well. So providing additional support with professionals in terms of social work, mental health, and alternative practices as well. Excellent. Again, is encouraging that life balance, not just a work-life balance, but a volunteering life balance. So as I mentioned to you, that huge amount of volunteers in Scotland, small amount of volunteers doing a huge amount of volunteering isn't sustainable. So how can we address that? All right. Having that dialogue about the challenges that can be there for people is really, really important. And again, is that if we're going to do something that we, as a leader of volunteers, we do that. So we lead by example. And again, it's okay to not be okay. Okay, so that's it from me. I'm just going to take a quick look at what we've got. The research that I was speaking about, Time Bank, you can Google Time Bank UK. You'll be able to download that. We survey our volunteers regularly, and I've done that one. Done that one. We've asked our volunteers whether they have a purpose, whether they feel involved. That's a really good one, Dawn. Thanks for sharing that in Scotland. And that's a really good one. Yeah, really, really good. Yeah, how do people feel a part of that? We've covered that one. Yes, you'll get a copy of the slides afterwards. Yeah, volunteer impact assessment. If you Google volunteer impact assessment, or it'll bring you to our website. If anyone's interested in it, I can send you on a copy if you'd like to have a look at one of the reports. Thanks, Tree, for your feedback. What was the first percentage that were volunteering? It's about, well, when they did the research, I think it was 32 or 34% of the population, and 66% of the volunteers do 6%. Many don't consider socioeconomics from volunteer background. Yeah, that's very true. EAP, we've covered as employee assistance programs. And do we know of any specific resources on eco-anxiety for those that volunteer in environmental climate areas? I don't, Patricia. And I am actually I'm a Leave No Trace trainer. You might be aware, I don't know where you are in the world, but Leave No Trace program. And that's something I'd be actually quite interested in. So yeah, it's not something I'm aware of. But if anyone wants to have a longer chat with me about something, absolutely no problem at all. Yeah, I'm doing that. And as I say, if you don't want to just pop an email, if you want to follow me. I'm on whatchamacallit on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. So that's great. Anyway, listen, thanks very much everyone for joining us today. Thanks to Thomas and Better Impact for supporting the session too as well. And good to see you all. Thanks everyone for your time. Thank you. Thanks, Thomas.